measured something like 15 by 15 feet and overlooked the same unlit, unpaved Poplar Street. It had an interior flagged with old whitewash, a leaky ceiling, a rusted sink propped up by a thin wall of crumbling adobe bricks, two tiny windows made of cardboard and pieces of glass, a creaky termite-eaten door too low for a person of average height to pass through without bending double, and a floor made of patches of cement and earth. It was similar to the dozen or so shocks strewn irregularly like lumps on a leaper upon the cracked greenless piece of ground named yard number 35. Okay, so 15, I am 6 feet tall, like on the dot. Okay, so 2 of me plus 3 feet is 15 feet. That's the length of their shock. So like put these sideways. Doubling. That's like the length of their shock. Okay, they're home. In this new shack, my brother George was weaned. It was amusing to witness my mother do it. The first day she began the process, she secretly smeared her breast with red pepper and then invited my brother to suckle. Unsuspecting, George energetically attacked my mother's breast, only to let go of it instantly and start hollering because of the hot pepper. That's so mean. This continued throughout the day whenever he wanted to suckle. Finally, after a few days, he began to dread the sight of my mother's breast, and each time she teased him with it, he would turn his face. He was now weak. My father bought a small white chicken. My mother brewed beer, a few relatives were invited, and a small celebration was held to mark George's passage from infancy to childhood. He was almost 2 years old. He now had to sleep with Flora and me in the kitchen. Soon after George was weaned, my father began teaching him, as he had been teaching me, tribal ways of life. My father belonged to a loosely knit group of black families in the neighborhood to whom tribal traditions were a way of life, and who sought to bring up their offspring according to its laws. He believed that feeding us a steady diet of tribal beliefs, values, and rituals was one way of ensuring our normal growth, so that in the event of our returning to the tribal reserve, something he insistently believed would happen soon, we would blend in perfectly. This diet he administered religiously, seemingly bent on molding George and me in his image. At first, I had tried to resist the diet, but my father's severe looks frightened me. A short, gaunt figure with a smooth, tight, black-as-coal skin, large, prominent jaws, thin, uneven lips whose sole function seemed to be the production of sneers. A broad nose with slightly flaring nostrils, small bloodshot eyes which never cried, small closet ears, and a wide, prominent forehead. Such were my father's fearsome figures. Born and bred in a tribal reserve and nearly twice my mother's age, my father existed under the illusion, formed as much by a strange innate pride as by a blindness to everything but his own will, that someday all white people would disappear from South Africa and black people would revert to their old ways of living. To prepare for this eventuality, he ruled the house strictly according to tribal law, tolerating no deviance, particularly from his children. At the same time that he was force-feeding us tribalism, we were learning other ways of life, modern ways, from mingling with children whose parents had shed their tribal cloth and embraced Western culture. My father's tribal rule had had its fulcrum the constant performing of rituals spanning the range of day-to-day living. There were rituals to protect the house from evildoers, to ward off starvation, to prevent us from becoming sick, to safeguard his job, to keep the police away, to bring us good luck, to make him earn more money, and many others which my young mind could not understand. Somehow they did not make sense to me. They simply awed, confused, and embarrassed me, and the only reason I participated in them night after night was because my father made certain that I did, by using, among other things, the whip, and the threat of the retributive powers of my ancestral spirits, whose favor the rituals were designed to carry. Along with the rituals, there were also tribal laws governing manners. So, anyone else have similar experience where you're kind of forced to do something by your parents because you're either terrified or there's a threat, or I used to be bribed with, like, when I was doing this, like, new leotards or, like, new swimsuits. I could get away with anything if I got a new swimsuit. Okay. One day, I intentionally broke one of these laws. I talked while eating. That's never done in my house, my father screamed at me as he rose from the table where he had been sitting alone, presiding over our meal. I was eating pop and blé out of the same bowl with George and Flora. We were sitting on the floor about the brazier, and my mother was in the bedroom doing something. You don't have two mouths to afford you such luxury, he fumed, advancing threateningly toward me. A cold sneer on his thin lips came for his mouth. He seemed 10 feet tall. Bring him back. Oh, wait, sorry. Terrified, I deserted the pop and blé and fled to mother. Bring him back here, woman, my father called through the door as he unbuckled his rawhide belt. Oh, He needs to be taught how to eat properly. I began bawling, sensing I was about to be whipped. My mother led me into the kitchen and pleaded for me. He won't do it again. He's only a child, and you know how forgetful children are. At this point, George and Flora stopped eating and watched with petrified eyes. Don't give me that, snarled my father. He's old enough to remember how to eat properly. He tore me away from my mother and lashed me. She tried to intervene, but my father shoved her aside and promised her the same. I never finished my meal. Sobbing, I slunk off to bed, my limbs afire with pain where the raw hide had raised close. The next day, as I nursed my wounds while my father was at work, I told my mother that I hated him and promised her I would kill him when I grew up. Don't say that, my mother reprimanded me. I will, I said sadly, if you won't leave me alone. He's your father, you know. He's not my father. Shut that bad mouth of yours, my mother threatened to smack me. Why does he beat me then, I protested. Other fathers don't beat their children. My friends always boasted that their fathers never laid a hand on them. He's trying to discipline you. He wants you to grow up like them. What? Me? Never! I shook with indignation. I'm never going to be like him. Why should I? Well, in the tribes, sons grow up to be like their fathers. But we're not living in the tribes. But we're still of the tribes. I'm not, I said, trying to focus the conversation on rituals. My nemesis, I said after a thoughtful pause. Is that why Papa insists that we do rituals? Yes, but other people don't. Everybody does rituals, Mr. Mathevane, my mother said. You just don't notice it because they do theirs differently. Even white people do rituals. Why do people do rituals, Mama? People do rituals because they were born in the tribes, and in the tribes, rituals are done every day. They are a way of life. But we don't live in the tribes, I countered. Papa should stop doing rituals. My mother laughed. Well, it's not as simple as that. Your father grew up in the tribes, as you know. He didn't come to the city until he was quite old. It's hard to stop doing things when you're old. I, too, do rituals because I was raised in the tribes. Their meaning, child, will become clear as you grow up. Have patience. But I had no patience with rituals, and I continued hating them. Participation in my father's rituals sometimes led to the most appalling scenes, which invariably made me the laughingstock of my friends, who thought that my father in his ritual garb was the most hilarious thing they had ever seen since natives in Tarzan movies. Whenever they laughed at me, I would feel embarrassed and would cry. I began seeking ways of distancing myself from my father's rituals. I found one. I decided I would no longer, in the presence of my friends, speak Venda, my father's tribal language. I began speaking Zulu, Soko, and Sangha, the languages of my friends. It worked. I was no longer an object of mockery. My masquerade continued until my father got wind of it. My boy, he began, who is ruler of this house? You are, Papa, I said with a trembling voice. Whose son are you? Yours, Mama's. Whose? Yours. That's better. Now tell me, which language do I speak? Venda? Which does your mama speak? Venda? Which should you speak? Venda? Then why do I hear you're speaking other tongues? Are you a prophet? Before I could reply, he grabbed me and lashed me thoroughly. Afterward, he threatened to cut off my tongue if he ever again heard I wasn't speaking Venda. As further punishment, he increased the number of rituals I had to participate in. I hated it. Chapter 6. Question? Headed.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Toward the end of 1966, my father was temporarily laid off his job as a menial laborer for a white firm in Germiston, a white city an hour's bus ride southeast of Johannesburg. He had been told by his, they say it's like gas, because they're the boss, that he would be recalled as soon as the reorganization of the firm was complete. It was coming under new ownership. The first few weeks, my father stayed at home awaiting a recall. It never came. As weeks slid past, he began making plans to seek another job, thinking that he had been permanently laid off. But first, he had to go to BAD, the Bantu Affairs Department. It still exists, but now it's called the Department of Cooperation and Development, to obtain a permit to do so. I was out in the streets playing soccer one weekday afternoon before it came running up to me crying. She told me that something terrible had happened at home, and I was wanted immediately. When I reached home, I found my mother pacing mechanically about the shack, covering helplessly, desperately, uncontrollably, clasping and unclasping her hands. It cannot be. No, it cannot be. Not my husband. Not my husband, she was saying to herself. What happened to Papa, Mama? I said with fright as I thrown myself at her. I thought that maybe he had been killed. For a while, my mother did not answer, but finally she controlled her emotions and between sobs told me what had happened. My father had been arrested that morning at the bus stop for being unemployed. A man who had been with him as they waited for the bus to Johannesburg to apply for permits had brought my mother the grim news. The man's story was as follows. As he and my father waited for the bus, several policemen suddenly swooped upon the bus stop. People fled in all directions. My father was nabbed as he tried to leave a fence. His pass was scanned and found to contain an out-of-work stamp. He was taken in. His crime, unemployment, was one of the worst a black man could commit. Yes. Yes, so he was arrested for not having his pass in order. Which, from their past, their documentation, it was similar to, what the Nazis did to the Jews by, labeling them with stars. In this case, they had to carry around a book of identification. They had to pay all these taxes. So it was just a way of, oppressing them. And he was in jail for, was it 2 months? Is that, am I right? Huh? I think it was 2 months. 2 months of hard labor. So now he is on a bus going to the place to get a work permit, and he's arrested. Okay, so now this is the worst thing a black man can be arrested for is unemployment. My mother sent me to fetch my father's relatives with the hope that they might find some way to secure his release. The relatives came, but couldn't help. Neither could our neighbors. What would happen to him now? I asked my mother. She told me not to worry, that my father would come back home after serving the customary 4-week sentence for being unemployed. 4 weeks went by, and still he had not come back. We began to worry. My mother wept every night. We children cried along with her. No word of his whereabouts came for yet another week. Suspecting the worst, that my father had been sent to Materby, my mother lost faith in herself and began to despair of our future. Things will be very different without your father, children. We did not understand, and we simply cried and grew faint. Pangs of hunger melted my resentment of my father away, and now that he was gone, I longed night and day for his return. I didn't even mind his coming back and shouting restrictions at me and making me perform rituals. I simply wanted him back, and as days slid by without him, as I saw other children in the company of their fathers, I would cry. His absence showed me how much I loved him. I never stopped asking questions about when he would be coming back. One afternoon, after it had been 2 months since I last saw my father, and we were now on rations, I asked my mother, when will Papa be back? I don't know, my mother said sadly. He may be gone for a long, long time. Why does he get arrested so much? Because his pass is not in order. Why doesn't he get it fixed? He can't. Why? You're too young to know. What's a pass, Mama? I knew vaguely what a pass was, but not its reality. It's an important book that we black people must have in order always and carry with us at all times. She took out hers and showed it to me. I remembered seeing the book. In fact, I remembered seeing it many times. And yet, each time I saw it, it appeared dreadfully new. There was something about it which made me fearful, helpless, but I could not figure out what about it made me feel that way. It seemed a mere book. Yet it was, I was to later find out, the black man's passport to existence. Naively, I told my mother that I did not have a pass, suggesting that the police would not take me away. You'll have to get one when you turn 16. Will they take me away too, Mama? I like they do, Papa? Hush, you're asking too many questions for your own good. My father's latest arrest, true to my mother's predictions, changed our lifestyle drastically. Lunch was now out of the question, and so was breakfast. And having Papa Blay became a sporadic, chancy luxury. My mother, who for some reason could not get a permit to work in Johannesburg, could not even afford to buy tea and brown bread. There came many days when we ate nothing at all, spending the long evening hours simply staring at one another, at the empty pots, and at the sun going down. George, Flora, and I resorted to eating our own mucus. Each day we spent without food drove us closer and closer to starvation. Then, terror struck. I began having fainting spells. I would be out playing when suddenly my head would feel light, my knees would wobble, my vision would dim and blur, and down I would come like a log. My playmate would then run away and shock. I would be told when I woke up, screaming that I was dead. My mother would then come and revive me, usually by pouring cold water over me or slapping me on the cheeks, or both. But there was sometimes a good part to my blackouts. Whenever I fainted near a store, I would get a piece of candy or fruit from the storekeeper upon reviving. Naturally, I loved fainting near stores, but my storefront fainting spells became so frequent that storekeepers, for fear of going broke, I suppose, no longer gave me anything. One day I asked my mother if we had any savings, and she replied that we did not have a cent, that we were a hand-to-mouth household, that when my father had been around, he had spent all his money on food, on paying rent, on bus fare, and on police bribes. I suggested that she borrow money from other people. Who? She asked. Our neighbors, I answered. She broke into a laugh, like that of a person being driven mad by hunger, and said, "Show me a black man with a penny to spare, and I'll bring your father back." My father's long imprisonment began to wreak daily nightmares on everybody in the house. Without income, we could no longer afford the rent for our dingy shack. One afternoon, the landlord, a fat, gray-haired, no-nonsense Mossalto man, came and told us that we would have to pack and leave at the end of the week unless we came up with his money. He said that he had the longest list of people waiting to grab the shack at any price, and he wasn't lying. Since word got around that we could not afford to pay rent, there had been a steady stream of shack seekers at the custodian's door. My mother begged him to give us at least a month's extension, pointing out that the eviction would automatically result in the family being endorsed out of Alexandra back to a tribal reserve. "We have nowhere to go back there," my mother implored. "This is our only home. Please let us stay. We'll get you the money somehow." The landlord relented and gave us until the end of the month to come up with the 3 months' rent we owed him. One weekday afternoon, while my mother was out hunting for food and money to pay rent, and Flora, George, and I were left alone in the house, 2 tall, powerful, belligerent Zulu men armed with spears and pangas, which were machetes, burst into the house and demanded to see my father. "He isn't home," I said with bated breath. George and Flora burst out crying. "Your mother?" She too. They looked about the kitchen for a couple moments and then stepped into the bedroom. They came back to the kitchen wielding the pangas and spears. George, Flora, and me clung to each other in terror. "When they get back, tell them we've been here." I nodded vigorously. Without saying another word, they proceeded to strip the house of furniture, seizing the wardrobe, chairs, and table, saying that the goods were payment for a mysterious debt of honor my father owed them. My mother came back, and I told her what had happened. There was nothing she could do to retrieve the furniture, she said. She could not even report the matter to the police, she added, for it would mean producing her passbook, which was not in order. As she sat figuring out what to do, tears streaming down her cheek, she said, "This is just the beginning." So remember how she had said that, like, the dad only paid money to rent food? So who are these people doing kind of some gambling, maybe? Okay, so they're coming for some sort of debt, right? A few weeks later, George and Flora came down with a mysterious illness. So if you're kind of zoning out, listen to this paragraph. A few weeks later, remember, George is 2 years old. George and Flora came down with a mysterious illness, which left them emaciated and lethargic. Their stomachs so distended that I thought they would burst. Their bodies were covered with sores, which punctured and oozed pus, and their hair turned to a strange orange color. There were times when, while fanning off blowflies with a piece of cardboard from their filmy, half-closed eyes, mucus-covered noses, and bruised mouths, while they lay writhing with pain on the damp cement floor, I thought I could see their tiny, empty intestines. Seeing them like that made me cry. Occasionally they excreted live worms with their bloody stools. Their tearing coughs kept everyone awake at night. Each time my mother gave them a morsel of food whenever she could get it, they vomited. Their suffering made the days and nights unbearably long and gloomy. My mother did not have the 100 cents of a dollar. She did not have the 100 cents to take them to the clinic, and no witch doctor, our last resort, was willing to treat them on credit. But with determination, courage, and love, she tried her best to nurse them back to health using some herbs Granny gave her. My brother and sister fought with the tenacity typical of African children to stay alive, but I wondered for how long. The strangest thing was that, except for a minor cough, I felt fine. My father's arrest had come in September, and when Christmas was but 2 days away, my mother dropped a bombshell. "There won't be any Christmas celebration this year," she said. "What?" I cried, reacting as if I were a convict and my mother a judge condemning me to death for a crime I didn't commit. Each Christmas, black families would celebrate by taking children of all ages to the Indian place on First Avenue to be outfitted with cheap garments, and some, the extremely lucky ones, with sneakers or shoes. The clothes were worn on Christmas and New Year's when families paraded their children on the streets in a pageantry designed to imply non-existent wealth. Chickens, goats, sheep, pigs, or cattle would be slaughtered by the various households depending on each's level of affluence and religious beliefs, and commensurately, Big or small feasts would be held, to which relatives from near and far came to partake in the festivities. Scones would be baked and gallons of Kool-Aid or cider made to give to children on New Year's, while the adults went about each other's homesteads drinking free liquor. And for the families who could afford it, their houses would be elaborately decorated with trinketry, and the very affluent would have Christmas trees in their homes and exchange small gifts. How come we won't be celebrating Christmas, Mama? Your father isn't here, my mother said. But Christmas is here, I said. Yes, I know, my mother said sadly, but we don't have the money to celebrate it with. But we've always celebrated Christmas, I said. That's because your father had been around and working, my mother said. When will he be back? I said, tears filling my eyes. I don't know, my mother said. When Christmas came, my mother locked my ailing brother and sister and me inside the house while she went about the township begging for cookies, Kool-Aid, and other foods to keep us alive. We children sat staring vacantly and longingly through the window at the bright streets teeming with children dressed in gaudy new outfits, sucking candy bars, munching cookies, laughing, playing, and romping around, all the time singing Christmas carols. Flora couldn't bear the agony of seeing her friends all dressed up, playing, and eating, and she burst into tears. As I closed the curtains to ease her agony, while trying hard to mask my own sadness, I consoled her. Don't worry, sis. Christmas is but for one day. It'll be over before you know it, and next year you'll be out there too, just like everybody else. Little was I aware that that first bleak Christmas was important for many similar ones to come. January, February, and March of the new year went by, still without any sign of nor word from my father. We could not visit him, for we had no money, and even if we had the money, we did not know to which prison he had been taken. My mother told me that the relatives of black prisoners were seldom notified about the whereabouts of their loved ones. Gradually, my father's absence began to change my mother's personality. She grew irritable and short-tempered, and any slight provocation made her explode in anger. She spent many an afternoon staring blankly through the window while singing songs of sorrow to herself as though she were going mad or something. She began to drink heavily, and whenever she was drunk, her hot temper got her involved in nasty fights with several women in the yards over such things as whose child had been shitting all over the place, or who had the right to draw water first from the communal tap in the middle of the yard. We had one tap for about 100 people. Inside the house, much of her anger was, fortunately, verbal rather than physical, but its presence nonetheless created a tense atmosphere, making me always self-conscious of what I said, how I said it, and when I said it. Her changed personality gradually began changing mine too. I became cranky. Many days I could not sit still in the house. Violent impulses would seize me whenever I was at play, so that I would, for no reason at all, pick fights with other children. I abused my brother and sister. To quiet my own hunger, I embarked upon a career of stealing beer and soda bottles from Shabeens, and frequently ended up in trouble. Fat Shabeen queens would engage in shouting matches with my mother, calling her all sorts of filthy names, and me a bastard, promising to work the voodoo on me. In an attempt to keep me off the streets and out of trouble, my mother said one day, "No more streets for you until you behave." She then told me that from now on I had to help her with household chores. She did much of the work, and I was required to lug water from the communal tap, run errands, and babysit my brother and sister.
Are their brother and sister like helping them?
They're starving,
Well,
basically.
they don't have that sickness anymore.
I think they still have the sickness, so I think they explain what happens to them, like what they had in the next chapter. Yes. So they're still ill, he's just not focusing on it as much. I think he's trying to explain that how many months have gone by since he first described their sickness. It's been like 4 months, right? That was in December. Now we're in March. So they've been dealing with this sickness for that long. One morning I was babysitting and watching my mother go about cleaning the house. My suspicions about something that was happening to her reached a peak. For some months I had been keeping a close eye on her stomach, and it kept on getting bigger and bigger by the day, while George, Flora, and I were getting thinner and thinner. I took her oversized stomach to mean she was getting fat, perhaps from stuffing herself secretly with all sorts of food in the middle of the night when we children were asleep. I had heard of mothers who did that. I began watching her like a hawk, expecting to catch her eating things alone. I followed her everywhere at all times of the day, including to the lavatory, where I would stand outside the door until she reemerged. Because my father was gone, George, Flora, and I now slept in the bedroom on the floor next to the bed. I would stay awake at night, even after the candle was snuffed, listening for any strange sounds that might suggest eating. Though I followed my mother around all day, kept a night-long vigil on her, there was nothing suspicious about her behavior. The crumbs of food she begged from people she shared with us, Yet her stomach kept on getting bigger and bigger, and we children were like scarecrows. How could that be? Finally, in desperation, I decided to confront her. It was early evening, and we were sitting about the smoldering embers of a brazier fire. My mother was busy patching our rags. Mama, I said hesitantly, hiding my face behind my hands to conceal embarrassment over what I was about to say, for I was still unconvinced that my mother, my own mother, the mother I loved, would dare eat food without sharing it with us. Yes, my mother said, lifting her eyes from her work to look at me. I coughed once or twice, then asked in a trembling voice, why are you getting fat? Am I fat, child? She laughed. Immediately, I took that as an attempt to hide her guilt. Yes, Mama, I said nervously. I don't think I'm fat, she said. Come over here. Take a look at my arm. She rolled up the sleeve of her gingham dress all the way to the shoulder joint, revealing a bony arm with stringy muscles. Is this fat? She asked. I shook my head embarrassedly. Her arm was a matchstick. Then what makes you think I'm fat? I eyed her carefully, suspiciously. Should I tell her? What would she think of me? I thought back to the many days I spent staring at empty pots and plates, how each such day shoved me closer and closer to the brink of starvation. It's your stomach, Mama. Should words spilled out of my mouth before I could stop them. Why does it keep on getting bigger and bigger? She roared with laughter. My suspicions grew, I don't know why. Oh, this? She exclaimed, pointing at the massive bulge. That's not fat, silly. What is it then? I asked, confused. She paused pensively for a few moments, then said softly, it's a bloated stomach. I looked at her uncomprehending. Finally, I said bravely, you haven't been eating much, have you, Mama? She fixed a searching stare at me, and the smile vanished from her face. My question had shocked her. For a long while, she said nothing, simply staring at me with silent amazement. I became tense. Had I said something wrong? What was she thinking? Was I right in confronting her so bluntly? I took the solemn expression on her face to mean that she understood my need to know why her stomach was so big. She hemmed several times, as if mulling over how to tell me whatever it was she was about to tell me. A few minutes passed in deep silence, during which I averted my eyes from her gaze. With a calmness of manner which somewhat but not quite concealed her astonishment of a moment ago, she finally spoke. Her bloated stomach, she explained, was of a different, strange, but harmless nature. It was not the result of eating too much food, she said emphatically. She asked me if I had not seen her with a bloated stomach before. I said no. She told me that she had 3 of them already, one when I was born, but she said I could not have seen because I was still at the clinic awaiting delivery. The second when my sister was born, and the third when my brother was born. The current one, she said, would disappear as soon as she had received another baby from the clinic. I did not ask her what was in her stomach, content with puzzling over why she would want another mouth to feed when there was not enough food to feed the mouths already here. Later, when I was older, my mother was to tell me all about the birds and the bees, and I reminded her of the bloated stomach episode, and we both laughed. Yes. No, so, think of, I have been pregnant before, so I can give you guys the video. You don't show that you're pregnant until you're almost like 20 weeks. At least, like, you could not tell I was pregnant until I was probably 6 months, like if I had this flutter on or things like that. And so she's not getting a lot of food, right? She's not eating anything. So for her body to be growing a baby, that baby's not going to be very large or of a normal size. So it's just taken months for her stomach to show and for him to notice. Does that make sense? So it's not that she cheated on her husband, because that would be like, she could be killed for that in this society, right? So that would never happen, but it just took longer to show. Okay, chapter 7. But isn't it funny that as a little kid, he's like, why on earth would you want another mouth to feed? Like, he's so rational without understanding, like, the tribal ways. Because in the tribal ways, you have to have, like, as many sauce. Yeah. They're get evicted? We'll get to it, Nathan. They haven't yet. Okay, chapter 7. This is the last one we're going to read, and then we're going to work on our homework, or on our packets. Alright, chapter 7. To prevent us from starving and to maintain a roof over our heads, my mother began running around the township, soliciting money with which to pay the rent and to buy food, but very little came of it. A few people tried to help, but in the main, black people were burdened with their own survival. When it seemed that no help was forthcoming, we resigned ourselves to the inevitable eviction and starvation. There you go, Nathan. Luck of some sort came when my maternal grandmother, who had been away in the Shangan Bantustan, attending a ceremony to exorcise evil spirits from a raving mad relative, came back unexpectedly. My mother told her of our plight. Granny had some money to spare. She paid the rent a week before we were to be evicted, brought us bread, sugar, and mealie-meal, which is cornmeal basically, and gave my mother 100 cents to take George and Flora to the clinic where their sickness was diagnosed as advanced malnutrition and chickenpox. Okay, so what they were suffering from was extreme malnutrition, which means that they were not getting the nutrients, basically, so your body kind of like goes into shock, and chickenpox. Okay, that kind of shows you how unadvanced they are, right? That, think of, like, when you guys get chickenpox, it's dealt with really quickly, right? There's a chickenpox vaccine. I've never had chickenpox. I hope I never get it. Okay? But they're suffering from it to an extreme of, like, from what was happening to them, right? Yes?
Isn't it like once you get it, you don't get it again?
So yeah, once you don't get it. But if you get it as an adult, it's terrible. That's why I'm like, stay away.
But then how are their lungs and
Malnutrition. And think of what they're eating. They're kind of like starving, right? So if you eat bacteria or you eat something that has maggots in it, it's going to be in your stomach. Huh?
Cool.
Cool, right? And remember, this isn't just this family, right? This is one family and hundreds of thousands. All right, shh. She paid the, okay. More money was required to continue their treatment, and Granny gave my mother 300 cents. Thinking her rich, I proposed to my mother that we would move in with her until my father's return from prison. My mother told me that could not be, that Granny was already overburdened with looking after herself and her other children, and could not afford to take us in. Moreover, my mother said my father's relatives would never sanction such a move. Why? I asked. We're starving as it is, and they aren't helping us in any way. I had close to a dozen relatives on my father's side scattered all over Johannesburg, yet since my father's arrest, none had come forward to help us. My mother explained that my father's relatives would not allow us to move in with any of her relatives because according to tribal marriage customs, we were my father's property. Her, myself, my brother, and my sister, therefore, for as long as my father was alive, regardless of his being in prison, we had to stay put in his kaya, or house, awaiting his eventual return. The money Granny gave us soon ran out. Granny could no longer help us because what she had given us had been her last money. My father was still not back. Where would we get rent money? Food money? There was a small grocery store nearby where my father, before his arrest, had maintained a simple charge account. It worked in the following way. During the week, he would buy things like candles, tea, sugar, paraffin, bread, matches, mealie-meal, and floor polish on credit, and on Friday, payday for him, he would settle the account. But since his arrest, the account had not been used. One afternoon, my mother and I went to the store to see if we could reopen it. The storekeeper, a lean Lesotho man with graying hair, told us we could not reopen the account, for there was no man in our house to settle it on Fridays. As my mother and I turned to leave, the storekeeper called us back. There was a way he could try and help us. If my mother would work at cleaning his house and washing his family's clothing, he could arrange to pay our rent. My mother agreed. She would be required to work on weekends, so our rent problem was taken care of. Now, what about food? Word came that a new garbage dump, the Malafi, had just opened, and many of Alexander's poor were going there in search of scraps of food. We decided to go there too. I never thought the day would come when we would have to do this, my mother said. Okay, trigger warning. This chapter is disturbing and it's reality, and it's gonna hit you somewhere. Okay. So, just be ready. The Malafi was on the veld fringing Alexander to the east, about a half a mile from where we lived. Every weekday, huge gray trucks arrived to dump garbage from white people's homes. Each morning, my mother would take Flora, George, and me, and the four of us would join the throng of black men, women, and children flocking down there. We always left home between 6 and 7 in the morning so we could be along the front wave of people rushing the trucks as they came in, usually around 10. The Malafi provided us with many items we could not afford: clothes, knives, furniture, spoons, cribs, mugs, forks, plates, and scraps of food. All at no cost. We simply had to be there very early in the morning, wait for the trucks to arrive, and dump, and then carefully dig our way through the heap of ash and refuse. collecting item after item as we worked the huge mound till sundown. We would use sticks and iron rods to dig, but often we had to use our hands, especially on Mondays and Tuesdays when the garbage contained perishables like half-eaten sandwiches and cold cuts. One morning I was digging alongside my sister when my stick struck something soft very deep in the debris. "Mama," I cried, "I think I found something nice." My mother, digging a couple yards away from me, asked what it was I had found. "I don't know yet," I said, but it felt soft. It must be food, and it's big. Upon hearing the word food, all the ashen-faced men, women, and children digging about me started inching toward me where I was digging, their faces lit with expectation. "Mama," I yelled, remembering previous fights which had erupted when families fought over rights to dig up white people's leftovers. "Don't dig in my child's territory," my mother screamed a warning and hurried over to protect my discovery by staking out the area I was digging in. "Where is your fine child?" she asked, sliding over me. In there, I pointed excitedly at the huge mound where I was digging, among the broken bottles and papers. My mother began digging delicately around the area, first with her stick to clear the broken bottles, then with her gnarled hands to reach the object. My sister and I joined her in the digging. My brother was strapped to my mother's back. "Careful about using your hands," she warned. "There's too much broken glass." My sister and I stopped digging, and we waited expectantly alongside, our mouths drooling. One of the women digging nearby said to my mother enviously, "Musadi," which means woman, "your children are lucky. They are the best diggers around. They seem to always know where the good things are. Just look at those sacks and boxes you have there with you. They're already full and it isn't even noon yet. I wish my children were like that, instead of the lazy fools my husband gave me." At that, she turned and pinched the ear of one of her children, a boy my age, and said, "Come on, dig. Why aren't you like Johannes? He finds his mother's things, and you don't find me anything. You just eat. The woman, who lived in her neighborhood, was envying boxes brimming with dented pots, knives, spoons, forks, broken mirrors, and articles of furniture. Things which, after being thoroughly cleaned, we would use as housewares. Since we began coming to Malawi, our collection of housewares had increased enormously. We now even had a couple of blankets, a leaky wash tub, and a baby crib. I was puzzled by what I thought to be wastefulness on the part of white people. They threw away, still in excellent condition, things that many black people could not even afford to buy secondhand. We had even managed to replace some of the furniture the two Zulu men had seized. "They've learned well," my mother said proudly. She stopped digging momentarily and took a pinch of snuff and sneezed noisily. She resumed digging, and presently she excavated the package, square, wrapped in thick brown paper and tied with a strong cord. Upon seeing the size of the package, an old woman nearby quipped, "Madam must have had one of her sumptuous banquets." Several women affirmed her claim. Continuing, the old woman in a hoary voice said, "I worked for a madam a long time ago when my papers were still in order, who had 3 refrigerators all stacked with food, and no children. And she would always throw away packages of meat because they were a day old. When I asked her to give them to me, she would reply, 'I buy you meat, girlie, is that not enough?' And the meat she was talking about was dog's meat." "They eat well, them white people," said an old man nearby. "Yes, sir, they eat well. They have everything," a jet black woman said in a shrill voice, "and we have nothing. Maybe it's an entire elephant," suggested a beady-eyed, one-armed man in tattered pants and without a shirt, referring to our package. "How I wish to find me a whole elephant, trunk and all! All my meat problems would be taken care of." My mother carried the brown package to the clearing. Several men, women, and children sat underneath the blazing sun. Some rested, tired from digging, others munched hungrily at dug-up sandwiches and other bland viands. "Mama," I whined hungrily, envious of all those people eating, "may I have something to eat too?" "Me too, please, Mama," cried my sister. "Take out one sandwich from the stack and share it with your sister." Grudgingly, because since hunger became a constant companion, I had developed the habit of not wanting to share food with anyone, not even my sister. I took out one of the butter and jam sandwiches and broke it into 2 uneven pieces, giving my sister the smaller one. "Mama," she whimpered, "look at what he gave me." I quickly gobbled up my lion's share. "Give her some more, Johannes," my mother said, unaware that I had already eaten up my entire share. "She's your sister, you know," she added, wiping her brow. "She's small," I mumbled with my mouth full. "She may be small," my mother said, still unaware that I had nothing left. "But that don't mean her hunger is. You must learn to take care of your sister. She's the only one you have." "I don't have any more," I said, throwing open my hands in triumph. He's eaten it all, Mama, my sister cried. Take out another sandwich, my mother said to me, and she added sternly, and this time, give her a bigger piece than yours, or you won't have any more. I took out another butter and jam sandwich. I broke it into 4 unequal pieces. Here, I give my sister 2 of the smallest pieces. You have 2, and I have 2. The equal number of pieces seemed to appease her, and she ate them in silence. Suddenly, I heard my mother scream, Yowie! Yowie! I turned and saw her leap away from the package that she was opening. Everyone around the place started. What's the matter? Asked everyone. Get away from me, Satan, shouted my mother, continuing to back away from the package as if fleeing a ghost. She trembled from head to toe. What's the matter, Musadi? Asked several women as they rushed to my mother's side. Zombie-like, my mother pointed at the package, unable to utter a word, her face a mask of indescribable horror. My sister and I stood equally thunderstruck a couple of feet away from her, clinging to one another in fear, wondering what was happening to our mother. Several men and women left their places and hurried over to where the brown package lay half opened. What the hell? Exclaimed one old man as he peered into the package. There's a baby in there. What? Several people gasped. There's a baby in here, repeated the old man, backing away from the package in fear. Is it alive? A woman asked. Are you mad? Retorted the old man. After being buried in such rubble, who would still be alive? What child is it? Asked one woman. Black child, the old man said angrily and added, what did you expect? Boy or girl? Still wrapped, can't tell. Go on, unwrap the rest, said the woman to the old man. Are you mad? Cried the old man. I'm touching no voodoo child. Everyone stood back, terrified. In the meantime, my sister and I had joined my mother, who was still shaking. We did not say anything to her. We simply clung to the hem of her ashen dress. Baby? Black? What was a black baby doing in a package? I wondered. Whose baby is it, Mama? I asked, fearful yet unable to contain my curiosity. Hush, my mother scolded me. While everybody stood about the package, petrified, an old woman with a decided limp in one leg hobbled from the back of the crowd to where the package lay. You're all pretending it's the first time you've seen a dead baby, she said as she struggled to kneel beside the package. These things happen every day. They kill them and throw them away every day. Tears filled her wrinkled eyes as she proceeded to unwrap the rest of the package. It's a girl, she said, and she's beginning to rot. Some of the women began weeping. The group of men and women started arguing what to do with the corpse, with the men insisting that for fear of getting entangled in a controversy that would certainly involve the police, the baby should be secretly buried in an unmarked grave. The women, however, unanimously refused to have the dead baby subjected to what they called an inhuman burial, and insisted that for the sake of the baby girl's soul, she be handed over to the authorities for a decent burial. The woman prevailed, but another heated debate soon developed over who should do the actual handing over. While it raged without sign of settlement, my mother, still shocked, gathered everything we had dug up for the day, and we headed home. At home, as we washed the ash off our faces, legs, and arms, and off the items we had gathered for the day, I asked her for more details about how a dead black baby ended up in a garbage dump. She told me that some maids and nannies who worked for white people, because of fears of losing their jobs in the event of an accidental pregnancy, would often smother the baby and dump the corpse in garbage bins so they could continue working. Wouldn't the police arrest such people for murder? I asked in shock. Police don't arrest black people for killing black people, my mother said. After the incident of the dead baby, we stopped going to Malawi. Instead, we began going to another site at the other end of the veld where a chicken factory, Sunnyside, dumped loads of dead, diseased chickens and rejected eggs. There, we would search for eggs which were uncracked. We found many of them, as many as 3 dozen a day, but on being cooked, many turned out to contain dead embryos in various stages of development. We stopped going to the egg dumping site when, of all the eggs we dug up, something like 99% of them turned up dead embryos. All right. So, disturbing? Yes. Something like this is called infanticide, which is the killing of an infant, and it happens every day, especially in rural countries. Did you understand what he's trying to expose about the conditions of South Africa? That these workers would rather kill their own baby than lose their job and starve themselves. And he made it very clear that this was not like a one-time case, right? He made it like very clear that this happened a lot. And he made that clear by having the other character come in and say, don't act like it's the first time you've seen a dead baby, right? Any questions on that scene? Janessa, you kind of raised your hand. I think this one could go. Okay. So, I think we have 4 more pages. Yeah. So 4 more pages and then we're done. Long after I had ceased having thoughts of him, long after my mother had given up him for dead, following constant nightmares she had had of his being killed by a white farmer for insubordination, and buried secretly in an unmarked grave long after my sister Maria was born under difficult circumstances at home because my mother could not afford maternity care, long after we had adjusted to a life without him, my father walked in one afternoon like a spook out of one of my mother's tales. After almost a year in prison, he was so changed that I hardly knew him. He had grown thinner, his body more bent, his skin blacker and coarse, his cheeks more hollow, his eyes so outward it seemed they were attempting to force their way out of the sockets. They seemed those of a man who had been through hell, and he was an embittered man. His attitude seemed that of a black man being changed into a brute. He spent days telling my mother about the horrid life he had led in prison, about the thousands of black men locked inside simply because they, like he, had committed the unpardonable crime of being unemployed. Thousands more because their papers were not in order, and still thousands more for entering the white world without permission. In particular, he spoke of the backbreaking work he had to do at various white farms and on chain gangs digging trenches and roads in the white people's world. A vindictive hatred for white people, which was soon to become the passion of his life, had crept into his speech, and as he spoke haltingly, his words ringing with anger and hatred, he punctuated each reference to white people with a letter word. He never stopped accusing various neighbors of being witches who were responsible for his arrest. I was glad to see my father back, for his absence had meant biting hunger, and I thought his presence would mean food. But in the latter, I was soon proved mistaken. Apparently, he told a story the day he was arrested. He threw his pass away so that when he appeared in court, he could plead guilty to a lost pass, rather than unemployment, which was a worse crime. But he now needed a pass before he could begin canvassing for a job in the white world. He began leaving home at 4 in the morning for the superintendent's office to apply for one. For some unknown reason, the authorities kept on giving him the runaround, telling him to bring this and that document, this and that certificate. Unable to read and too proud to seek help from those who could, he kept on taking the papers each time. Finally, through a process of elimination and some luck, he was given a pass. But for yet another stretch of months, no white man was willing to hire him because of his arrest record. Stamped on his pass, and as a result, hunger remained in the house. Growing each day, and in its attempts to grow, it would gnaw at my guts, disorient me, and make me hallucinate. One evening, while I was sitting by a brazier, staring at its flaring coals, and at a black empty pot on it, envying from my 3-month-old sister Maria, sucked lustily from my mother's breast, I began feeling dizzy. Watching my sister suckle filled me with hatred, and my hot head thought of forcibly wrenching her away from my mother's love and sucking the succulent gourd of milk myself. Yet something made me refrain, something which was fanning the fire inside my head, something which was making my head spin crazily round and round. Suddenly I cried out, "Mama, the house is spinning, make it stop, I want to get off." I faintly heard my mother say, "Nothing is spinning." But to me, things spun as a pot in a whirlwind. In desperation, I clutched my head and attempted to rise, but I only managed to lurch about dizzily in the direction of the brazier. Do you guys know what a brazier is? It's like a heater. Instantly, my mother reached out and grabbed me. I tussled with her as she tried to calm me down to move me away from the brazier, lest in my frenzy I should tip it over. As she fought to subdue me, her hands clamped around my neck. I sunk my teeth into the nipple of her drooping breast. She shrieked in pain and I broke loose. I lurched forward and nearly fell onto the brazier. As I staggered dizzily about the kitchen, screaming, not knowing where to go or what to do to stop my spinning head, my mother, now recovered from the bite, came after me. Suddenly, the gyrating objects developed huge mouths and began laughing at me, a roaring, crazy laughter which split my head in two. As the maddening laughter continued, each whirling object suddenly contorted, enlarged, ballooned, stretched, shrank into all sorts of grotesque, shifting monsters, all of them attempting to swallow me up. Each fiend had big red, unblinking eyes and a wide red mouth without lips, from which protruded massive, shiny, razor-sharp teeth. Suddenly, all the monsters burst into flames. "Mama!" I screamed as I staggered about the room, my mother chasing after me. "The house is on fire!" "There's no fire," my mother said. The house is on fire, Mama, I repeated. There's no fire. My mother's hands clamped around my neck. She brought me down and continued yelling that there was no fire. But to me, there was a fire, a huge fire, and I continued twisting to duck red-hot planks hurtling from the ceiling toward me. My mother smacked me several times on the cheeks. Calm down! The next I knew, I was soaking wet. My mother had somehow poured water all over me. My body cooled down. I stopped screaming. I felt spent. I breathed heavily, and my mother drooled. My mother stood me near the open window and rested my head on her lap. A cool breeze was blowing. There's no fire, she said, sighing lightly. You're imagining things. Calm down. You'll be all right. After a while, my head stopped spinning, but I still felt lightheaded and rickety. The fire inside my limbs cooled down. I felt so exhausted that my limbs ached. My mother half carried and half dragged me to the cardboard mat and laid me down, swaddling me in a black blanket. She began singing folk songs and telling me a story. I found it all soothing, and my mind felt at ease. I went to sleep on her lap, no longer feeling hungry, even though I had not eaten any food. The next morning, I awoke and found myself under the table. George and Flora asleep beside me, pencil-like rays of spring sunshine streamed through the window and the slightly open door. I put on my ragged clothes and stepped outside to stretch and yawn while soaking in the sunshine and warmth. A cool, gentle breeze blew boiling small clouds of dust as my mother, Maria, slung loosely about her back, swept to the stoop with a grass broom. Mama, I said as I yawned and stretched, I had a strange dream last night. Let's hear it. I had dreamed of being marooned on a strange island, and as I wandered about the land, I came across a group of white men clad in loinskins who, upon seeing me, fell on their knees and worshipped me as if I were a god. They then led me to a huge hut filled with mangoes, papayas, curried rice and fish, oranges, chocolate candy, milk, bread smeared with peanut butter and jam, bananas and guavas, where they clad me in a rainbow-colored tonga, like a chieftain, set me upon a high boulder in the midst of all the food, and beseeched me to eat everything, saying that there were many other huts similarly filled with food, which was all mine to eat. I began gobbling all the food until my stomach burst open, revealing my cloyed intestines, which burst open too. However, I didn't die. My mother, in divining my dream, told me that the events in it meant that someday I would find myself in a faraway place among strangers who would take me in, clothe me, and provide me with all the things I wanted. By some stroke of luck, my father got his old job back. Now armed with a steady job, he set out to rebuild our former life. We now ate full meals and dressed in clothes slightly better than rags. But things were never quite the same. There was now a definite change in our life. We could not regain the past. It seemed gone forever. A definite sense of insecurity and helplessness had entered our life to stay for years to come. My father was now a completely changed man, so changed that he now began drinking and gambling excessively, and from time to time, quarreling with my mother over money matters and over what he called my mother's streak of insubordination, not befitting the woman he fought. But he still tried in his own way to be a father and a husband. One evening he came staggering home drunk as a sot. It was a Friday. He called Flora, George, and me to the table, saying he had a big surprise. We kneeled in front of him as if we were not allowed to sit at the table and watched him unpack a brown paper bag. There was mubodu and mala, which was chicken feet, intestines, and heads. A delicacy, the equivalent of a steak. A packet of candles and a small bag of mealie meal. Packets of salt and sugar, and then a surprise, a packet of fish and chips wrapped in newspaper. We children were overjoyed. It had been ages since we last had fish and chips. We danced and sang with delight. George and Flora ran up to my father and embraced him. He blushed. I could see he was happy. My mother smiled. That was one of the few happy times I was to see our entire family. Okay, so in your packets, first of all, any questions? So this is a very different read from Lord of the Flies. Lord of the Flies, you could like read a page and be like, what the heck read, right? Whereas this doesn't have as thick of like symbolism and literary advice. This is like straight some guy's terrible life, right? That's really strong on theme. So we're focusing on this book is theme. Okay, how does this theme develop? So in your packets, can I borrow this? You should have this. It looks like this. You have two things to do. Okay, page 1. So it says, in instructions 1 through 9, we skipped 4. Matthew describes his early life in Alexander before he starts school. He vividly portrays the effects of apartheid on his life and the lives of other black people. As you read these chapters, make notes about the effects of apartheid on Black adults and children in Alexandria. Okay? You should have examples throughout 1 through 9. So I'm not going to, you can do it now so far that we've read, right? And then if you wanted to add more after you read 8 and 9, that's fine. But we'll do this now. So on the left side, I want you guys to consider, how does apartheid affect the Black children? Okay? So this system of legal segregation in the book, how is it affecting the children? Okay? On the right-hand side, how does apartheid affect the Black adults? Does that make sense what I'm asking? Okay. So you're supposed to find examples from the text on each side. Okay, so you need at least 4 for each. Yes?
Can we just put quotes, or do we have to just put quotes and explain?
If you're going to put a quote, you should explain. You can just reference, you don't have to put a quote, but you can just reference the scene. Alright, and then the other thing, in your FYI packets, you're going to need to annotate the curse of the oh, sorry, not that. Yes, 1 and 9, you're going to need to read these and annotate. Okay? Page 1 of the FYI packet. Sorry, page 3, after the background. Just reference things from the text. Does that make sense?
Are we supposed to do
So
all?
I don't need a quote. Okay.
Are we supposed to do this page?
No. Yep, just these two.
Okay.
So we just annotate this?
Yep.
Just passage?
Yes. Really?